Hey, I'm Josh from Vacuums, Arts and Sewing 2 in Colorado, and today I'm going to walk you through troubleshooting steps to find a clog in your modern Dyson ball. This video applies to really any Dyson ball that's manufactured in the last, I believe, 12 to 14 years. They all have a very similar design. There's some slight nuance between the different models, but overall, this is going to apply to any Dyson ball in the last 12 to 14 years. This video presents you with some basic troubleshooting steps that you can take at home to get your appliance working again. And that said, there's always risk involved with appliance repair. You could hurt yourself, you could damage the appliance worse, you could hurt those around you for that matter. Follow these steps at your own risk. We're not liable for any damages that might occur as a result of following the steps in this video. I also encourage you to watch the video in its entirety prior to starting to be sure that you can follow through with all of the required steps to complete the repair. So the Dyson ball is a little bit tricky to troubleshoot when it comes to clogs. It has a unique design because of what's called the changeover valve that's right here. And what that valve does is when the machine is reclined, it changes over the airflow to go to the head because you're going to be cleaning floors. And when you put it in the upright position, the changeover valve will change over to redirect suction into the hose. You'll notice with your Dyson, when you turn it on and it's in the upright position, you'll be able to feel and hear air coming out of the wand up here, assuming that it's not clogged. And then when you recline it, you'll no longer feel air coming out from up here. So they're a little bit different to unclog than some other machines that have a more simplistic design, but I'm going to walk you through how to get this unclog done. So the first thing that's important to know when you're doing an unclog is you need to understand the pathways that the air flows through the machine, because essentially what you're going to do is you're going to chase down the clog to locate it. And it's important to know how the air is flowing through the machine. So in the upright position, the air will enter the wand. Typically, you would be removing the wand from the machine to do your above the floor cleaning, cleaning the ceiling, or using the attachments and brushes, and etc. So the air will flow in up here, and then it will go down. It will enter the changeover valve, which will divert the air up into this tube, which will go into the cyclone. It'll then spin around and do a whole bunch of unnecessary things inside of the cyclone. And eventually, it'll exit the cyclone. The air will exit the cyclone into the motor, which is down here. This is where the motor will suck essentially the air out of the cyclone. And then it will exhaust out the side of the machine. There's a filter right here. So you might notice when you're using your Dyson that you always have air blowing out the side. That's where the cleaner air is exiting the machine. When you recline the machine, this changeover valve here will engage, and now the air will be flowing into the head down here. It'll go through a lower hose in here, through the changeover valve, and then up into here, into the cyclone, through the motor, and out again. So we're gonna start by, you plug the machine in, turn it on. Feel if you have air up here. If you do have air up here, then you know that you don't have a clog either in your wand or inside of your hose. If you do not have air here, you'll also hear, typically, the motor sounds suffocated or it sounds struggling. In that case, you have a clog somewhere in the wand or the hose. So what we're going to do is we'll take the entire cord off, because that's the only way to take the wand out of these. Remove the wand. There's a button on the back of the hose that will release the wand entirely from the hose, and now you have just the wand. Now this is really easy to troubleshoot. It's straight, so you look right through it. If you see a clog, if you don't see light at the other end of it, well, then there's a clog in here. This is also pretty easy to unclog. Because it's rigid plastic, you can take a dowel or a stick. Broomsticks are too big, they won't fit in here. But you can take something long and you can poke the clog out. Now, one thing to remember when you're trying to remove a clog is the way the clog got in is it went through this end. This is the end you're cleaning with. The suction goes in here. So the clog went in this way. If you go and try to shove the clog out by pushing harder this direction, you may actually make the clog lodged worse, and it'll be even harder to get out. So when you're trying to remove the clog, your first approach is to go the opposite direction and to come through this direction and try to shove it out that way. Another thing to note on these wands, something that we see relatively commonly, and this is very specific, the caps on medicine bottles like cough syrup, like Dayquil, NyQuil. They are clear and they are the perfect size to fit inside of here. They're flared, so once they go in, they will stick. And when you go to look through it, because that medicine cap is clear, you'll be able to see light and you won't see the clog. But there is in fact a clog. So if you're not getting airflow, you know there's a clog in here and you can't see it, look very closely. You may actually find that you have a clear item like a bottle cap or something inside of here that you can see right through, and it's hard to detect the clog. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come in, they have attempted to troubleshoot, they cannot find the clog because the clog is a clear plastic cup. So if you've removed the wand and you see no clog in there, but weren't getting any airflow there, you have a different issue. Now, your problem is almost certainly not inside of the hose, because if you look, when this wand is inserted, it goes the entire length of the hose. So you couldn't possibly have a clog in there because this fills the entire hose. So your issue is not in your hose. The only place you could have the clog is in here. The exception is if you're not able to fit your wand all the way down, like you try to put it in and it sticks right here, that is because you've got a clog inside of your hose and you can't shove the wand all the way in. If that's the case, this hose removes easily. Take your canister off. I say easily. There's a little red tab right here, sometimes a gray tab that you can depress. And you press that tab and then you can pull the hose out. Now on older machines, the hoses can tend to be stuck. You have to kind of wiggle it. You need to be careful here because these hoses, they break rather easily. And so you could potentially rip it. Just try to be careful. And then you have the hose out. Once you have the hose out, same thing, it's straight. You can look through it. You can see if there's any clogs. So a word of caution, if you do indeed have a clog in your hose, don't use a coat hanger. They're sharp. And what will end up happening is you'll end up puncturing the side and then you have to buy a new hose. Again, so if you look at your hose, when you're cleaning, your air is flowing in this side. So if you get a clog, it came in this direction. So you want to extract it the opposite direction that it came in. One thing that you can do with hoses is turn the machine on, put the canister back on so that you have actual airflow. Turn the machine on and you can shove kind of the opposite end of the hose down here where the airflow is now. It doesn't fit perfectly because it's a different size on this end than it is this end, but you can get it in there and you can get some suction on there. Turn the machine on, and then if you stretch the hose and massage the hose, you'll often start feeling where the clog is. You'll feel there's a clump here. These hoses are clear. They're usually so dirty you can't really see that much, but you can often feel the clog, and you can have that in there while the machine is on, and you can kind of stretch that and massage the clog out, and you might be able to suck the clog out the opposite direction that it came in, and then it'll go inside of your canister and you'll need to remove it from the canister, whatever it is. You need to be careful. Again, these hoses are pretty fragile, and if you have rigid things like bobby pins are really common inside of the clog and you're pressing and massaging on it, again, you can puncture the side of the hose. Another thing we see a lot of are Christmas tree ornament hooks, those little metal hooks. Very common. They'll hook in the side of the hose and then everything will just kind of stick on them and you'll get a big old clog behind them. So that is how you would remove a clog from a hose. Worst case scenario, if you can't get it out or if you damage the hose, there are aftermarket hoses available. Sometimes Dyson will sell the genuine hoses, sometimes they won't. Word of caution, Dyson is not particularly motivated to make parts accessible to consumers in the United States for obvious reasons. If you can't find parts, then you have to buy a new vacuum, and that's more profitable. And Amazon tends to be the most expensive place to buy parts because what people do is they buy the parts direct from Dyson, just from their consumer-facing website or from dealers that may still have leftover parts from when Dyson sold parts. Then they mark it up dramatically and put it on Amazon. It's actually one of the worst places to buy Dyson parts because the markup is so incredibly high. So say we have no suction up here at the wand. And so we said, well, there's got to be a clog in the wand, maybe a clog in the hose. And we found that there are no clogs, but we still have no suction. That's going to bring us down to something going on with the canister itself. So what we would do at that point is we remove the canister, turn the machine on, and carefully, without letting anything go in here, because this goes directly into the motor. This bypasses all the filtration. There's a little grill here to keep large items from going into the motor. But if you turn the machine on without the cyclone on, you've got direct suction right there. So remove this, turn the machine on, and verify that you do indeed have airflow down here directly into the motor. If you do not, you're screwed. There is another filter back here which could be replaced, but it's incredibly rare that the final filter is so clogged that you have a significant reduction in airflow. That filter is supposed to get only very, very small particles. And while it should be replaced on a regular basis for air quality concerns, and it does restrict air over time as it gets clogged up, it is profoundly rare that the final filter would get so clogged that it would restrict airflow enough that you wouldn't feel airflow right here. And if it does get that clogged, any debris that is in that filter has already traveled directly through the motor, and much of that debris has stuck to the motor, and your motor is completely coated with stuff now anyway. So if you don't have airflow here, you probably have a motor issue, and that's typically not something that people tackle on Dysons. Again, Dyson doesn't love selling parts. I don't know if they even currently sell the motors to their machines in the United States. And the repair itself is actually an incredibly time-intensive repair to replace a motor on one of these Dysons. So that said, let's say you did turn it on, you do get suction, which is most likely the case. Your issue is somewhere inside this overly complicated engineering marvel. So one thing is you could very simply have, this machine doesn't have a filter in it, but there will be a filter here. Your filter here could be completely clogged. I'm going to assume that you've probably already looked here at this point before you even got on YouTube to try to get some help. But if your filter here is completely clogged, it needs to be, really it should be replaced. This is a washable filter, it's a sponge filter, but if your filter is so stinking bad that you have loss of airflow at this point, you need a new filter. You can wash it, but the very fine particles that are inside of it are not going to wash out. They're just going to turn to paste. And then you'll put the filter in and it will be half clogged anyway. So just get a new filter. The other possibility is that the cyclone itself is clogged. And these, again, I've said it a few times, these overly complicated cyclones clog the second you start using them. The dirt and debris starts coating all of the walls of all of these tiny little air pathways that are in here and restricting those pathways over time. And so your airflow starts dropping as you start losing bandwidth, as it were. So everybody knows you push the red button on top, the door opens up down here, and then you dump the dirt out. There's another button, it's typically gray back here, which will allow the entire canister to come off and will give you better access to the cyclone assembly itself. Due to the design of the cyclone, the genius design by James Dyson, the debris spins around in a circle. And if you have longer hair in your house, what will commonly happen is that longer hair will wrap itself all the way around the cyclone, around this mesh right here. And once the hair is wrapped around it, then smaller debris will stick to it and it can completely clog this mesh. There's a couple Dysons which are now discontinued, the Dyson Big Ball, whatever it was. Their mesh in particular too is very, very fine. So even finer dirt will clog that mesh and restrict airflow pretty dramatically. So it could be that this mesh is all clogged up. For that, I mean, you can clean the hair off. Obviously, you can pull the hair off, which is kind of gross, whatever. But realistically, you need air compressor or possibly canned air to really blast as much of that debris out as possible. If you're going to do that, put on a mask, go outside, and you'll find if you blast air around this ridge right here, so there's kind of these two sort of rings, you're going to want to blast air through here. It will explode debris out of here and out of here. You'll want to have this open so that the air can flow through the canister as you're doing this. It will explode debris all over the place. It will amaze you how much dirt and allergens and mold and pollen and just gross stuff is sitting in this canister that your air is constantly cycling through and picking up as you're using your vacuum. But that may also, that buildup of debris that's taking place in that cyclone over time, that may also be restricting your airflow. So at that point, we're going to go all the way back to where we started here on our first step. And we said the first thing we're going to check is we're going to check the wand up here to see if there's suction. And we said, well, there's not suction. So we're going to kind of follow this all the way down here. Well, say there is suction. Say you turn the machine on and you do have suction up here. So at that point, you know, there's no clogs in the hose, there's no clogs in the wand, and your cyclone is just fine, your motor is fine, your post filter is fine. Probably not fine, nobody maintains their post filter, whatever. But you have airflow, but the machine is not functioning properly when you're using it on the floor, right? So the first thing I want to note is check to make sure that your brush is spinning and fully spinning when the machine is in a reclined position and this button is turned on. On these particular machines too, there's actually two brushes, one on each side. There's like a gearbox in the middle, and there's a short brush on one side and a longer brush on the other side. What can happen is the gearbox will break, and sometimes one side will spin and the other side will not spin. So you're only cleaning about 6 inches of your carpet instead of all of your carpet. and you'll hear it turn on. And you know, these clear things, they always get dirty, so you can't really see what's going on in there. You'll hear it turn on, but you won't realize that half of your brush head is not spinning. Check that first. There is a misconception due to primarily the marketing of this guy that suction is this super important thing you need to worry about with your vacuum cleaner. It's one of the least considerations when looking at vacuum performance. The most important thing when cleaning flooring is the effectiveness of your brush. If your brush is not spinning, it doesn't matter how much suction the machine has, you're not going to be cleaning anything. You might as well push a cardboard box around on your living room floor. It's going to be about as effective at cleaning your floor. So check your head, make sure that's spinning. So say that is spinning, we're good. We know we have a clog somewhere in here at this point, most likely. We have a clog somewhere in here at this point. So the head on these will actually pop off, which gives us a lot more access and a lot more visibility. There's a little clip right here. It's usually red and sometimes it's a lighter gray. And that clip will pop right off. And when that clip pops off, the entire head will come right off. Now at this point, we can check the head. A really common place is right here, because they have this weird baffle system in here that makes the air pathway get much narrower, and it makes it really easy to clog here. So often you'll find buildup in here. You can see it visibly. Other times you'll be able to see buildup down here, and that will be the source of your clog. Now, don't stop there. If you see it there, certainly you can remove it pretty easily with, most people have needle nose pliers in the house. That's super, super easy. The base plate itself, this plate will come off. There's a couple different designs. This one has two little turning thingies right here. It'll come off and give you much more ready access. But don't stop there, because frequently what will happen is your clog will actually start somewhere in here and then back up. And what you end up finding is the end of the clog, not the start of the clog. So if you see a clog there, remove it. But regardless of whether you see one there or not, you're going to want to continue and check right here, check the inlet. Because what we have here is it curves, right? So if you suck up something you shouldn't and it manages to get through this like super complicated narrow channel, what we see really frequently is popsicle sticks. They'll kind of go in sideways, they'll work their way in, and then they stop here and they're kind of sideways and everything backs up behind them. So you can look down in there and you can actually see there's a little bit of a clog in there. And again, needle nose pliers, if you see something, you can pull it out. Now, one caution, so you can see right here, this is rigid plastic. Right after this, there is a flexible and very delicate hose. And these hoses actually rip all the time, just from wear and tear. The air is dry and they shred. So you don't want to, again, you don't want to put a clothes hanger or something and shove it in here, because you will break that hose. And that is not as simple as this tool hose where you just buy a new one and snap it on. You have to rip the entire thing apart. It's a horrible repair, and half the time those hoses aren't available anyway. So be very careful if you do have a clog there, removing that clog. And finally, I'm now going to get to the unclogged door. If you remove the canister, you'll see that there's a little door right here, which is intended to give you access actually to the changeover valve, where clogs are relatively common. But what's common with these, when you open that up, you can look down and you can see, again, a flexible, very delicate hose, so you need to be careful. You'll look down and you'll see nothing. And that will be because there is a popsicle stick, or a lollipop stick is super common, or large bobby pins right in here. And when you recline the machine, what that stick will do is it will prevent the changeover valve from engaging and redistributing the airflow down here. But you can't really see it through here, but it's stuck in there. I can't tell you how common that is. You can see it if you remove the hose. You can see it from this side. From this side, you can typically see it. If you can't see it from one side, you can see it from the other. Now, one thing you can do to verify that your changeover valve is functioning, and that's another thing that happens, is sometimes you don't have a clog. Very commonly on some models, the Dyson Big Ball, again, it's discontinued, the changeover valve itself will stop functioning. It will stick. So when you recline the machine, it may start to engage, but it won't fully redirect and move that hose to the lower, so the air never redirects. You can remove the side of it to get better visibility in here to the changeover valve. And then if you recline the machine, you can see the changeover valve functioning as it reclines. You'll be able to see it flop back and forth, and you'll actually be able to see that hose go from up here to flip and go to the bottom. and verify that it's functional. On this one, it's actually sticking a little bit, and it's really common on older machines where it won't fully engage to the lower hose when it goes over, but when the machine is on, because of the airflow, the suction will actually kind of pull it the rest of the way and then stick it together. Finally, there is another place here to get the clogs. On most machines, it's back here, and there's a little red tab, and I think it's red on all of them. On this particular machine, there's a Phillips head screw. It's a very small Phillips head screw that's holding this tab in place. If you remove that screw, you'll be able to pull this hose off, and you'll be able to look down it directly. Now, again, it's a very small screw. It's a very specific screw, so be careful not to lose it. Some designs don't actually have a screw there. They have a clip, and you can just clip and snap it. Now, be careful because, again, this little clip right here is very delicate, super easy to break, and if you break that red clip, you have to replace this entire lower hose, which, again, involves ripping apart this entire bottom assembly. Super complicated, total pain in the butt. But if you remove that, you now can straighten the hose and you can look straight through, because you remember the hose, it's kind of got this bend, but when you remove the hose, you can straighten it up and you can look straight through. So if you have a really difficult to get clog down here, you can look straight through and get to it there. I try to do that last because of how sensitive that is and how easy it is to break that tab. And if that tab breaks, you have to fix it. Like there's no glue, there's no dye. Well, is there a special kind of duct tape? No, not even SpongeBob duct tape, not even gaffer tape, not even zip ties will fix that. You have to replace it if you break it. So I try to play with those as little as possible. That's it. Those are all the places you could potentially have a clog. Going back to the changeover valve, if your issue is that your changeover valve is not properly redirecting, again, double check if there's something in there that's blocking it, popsicle stick, lollipop stick, stuff like that. But if your changeover valve is not redirecting, realistically, that probably is not a repair that you want to tackle for a few reasons. The parts availability is not great. A lot of times you can't get new. I don't love using used parts in this case because we're looking at a worn out part being replaced by another worn out part with known high failure rates. So you really do want new with new springs with good tension on them. So parts are hard to get a hold of, and it's not a particularly easy repair. It's certainly not something that I would suggest, you just do on your living room floor necessarily. So if that's the case, yeah, there's videos on how to do it on the internet. We may even have videos on it, but don't love that repair. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully your vacuum is now running. I don't know, like and share or something. It's a vacuum video. Don't share this with your friends.